I was so shocked when I found out my parents had emptied my entire savings account, just to pay for my brother's fancy wedding, as if my dreams didn't matter at all. From the moment I got my first job at 19, I swore I would never rely on anyone else for my future, especially not my family. My parents always had a clear favorite, my older brother, Ethan. He was the golden boy, the one they paraded at family gatherings and compared me to whenever I achieved something. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" was a phrase I'd heard so often that it had become a background noise in my life. Still, I tried to earn their approval through hard work, independence, and quiet perseverance. Every paycheck I received, I saved a little, sometimes just a few dollars, sometimes a little more. I cut corners on meals, skipped vacations, and lived modestly. Over 8 years, I built up a solid savings account, one that represented every sacrifice I'd made, every late night I'd worked, every dream I'd postponed. That money wasn't just paper. It was proof that I was capable of taking care of myself, even if no one believed in me. I still remember the day I first told my mother about my growing savings. She smiled with an expression that seemed proud, though something about it made me uneasy. "That's smart, Emily," she said in a sweet voice. "You've always been responsible." I thought it was a moment of connection between us, a rare acknowledgement that I was doing something right. I didn't realize then that the same pride in her eyes would later turn into justification for betrayal. Months passed, and life continued as usual. I worked long hours, sometimes covering for absent colleagues, and dreamed of finally buying a small apartment. I'd already begun looking at listings online, nothing fancy, just a cozy space of my own. I imagined decorating it with simple furniture and soft light, maybe a bookshelf filled with the novels I'd never had time to read. Freedom was within reach. Then one evening, I came home from work, exhausted but content, to find the living room full of laughter and noise. Ethan was there with his fiancée, Clara, their hands entwined, beaming at my parents. Wedding magazines were spread across the coffee table, and the air smelled of celebration. My mother looked at me as I stepped in and said, in a tone so cheerful it chilled me, "Emily, you'll be so happy to know your savings came in handy." For a moment, I didn't understand. "What do you mean?" I asked, setting my bag down slowly. Dad chuckled, waving his hand as if it were a trivial matter. "We used your savings account for the wedding deposit. You'll understand, it's a family event after all." I felt the blood drain from my face. My body went cold. You used my savings?" Mom gave a dismissive laugh. "Don't make such a fuss. It's not like you were using it right now. You're not married, you're not even dating. Ethan needs help, and as family, we support each other." My throat tightened as I stared at them, waiting for someone to tell me this was a misunderstanding. But no one did. Ethan leaned back on the couch with a smug grin and said, "Come on, Em. Don't ruin the mood. It's my big day and we need to lock in the venue. You'll get over it, get over it." That phrase echoed in my mind like poison. 8 years of sacrifice gone without a word. I had trusted them enough to leave the account linked to my parents when I first opened it at 19. Something I never thought would come back to destroy me. I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. "You had no right. That money was mine. You stole from me." My father frowned as if I were being dramatic. "Don't use that word. We didn't steal anything. We just used family resources for family needs. You'll make it back." I stared at all of them. The parents who had raised me, the brother who had taken everything for granted. And I realized that in their eyes, my efforts didn't matter. My hard work, my independence, my dreams, they were disposable compared to Ethan's happiness. That night, I sat on my bed, numb, as tears slid silently down my face. I replayed the scene over and over again, hoping I had misunderstood. But the bank statement in my inbox confirmed everything. The entire balance, nearly 8 years' worth of my life, was gone. Used for floral decorations, catering deposits, and the dream venue my brother and his fiancée wanted. I tried to sleep, but anger burned beneath my skin. How could they smile while taking something so personal from me? I remembered all the times I'd bailed Ethan out when he forgot his rent, all the times I'd defended him when he got into trouble, believing family meant loyalty. And now, when it was my turn to chase something of my own, They had taken even that. The next morning, I confronted them again, but their reactions were the same: minimizing, patronizing, filled with false affection. "You're overreacting," my mother said. "It's not the end of the world." My father added, "You'll thank us one day when you see how beautiful the wedding is." Something inside me cracked. For years, I had bitten my tongue, smiled through disappointment, and tried to earn their approval. But in that moment, something cold and sharp took its place. I realized that no matter how hard I tried, I would never be their priority. Ethan always would. And if I wanted justice, I'd have to take it myself. I didn't know what form it would take yet. Revenge, closure, or something in between. But I promised myself that night that I would not remain the quiet, obedient daughter they could manipulate. I would make them see the consequences of their choices. As I lay awake in the dark, I imagined their perfect wedding unraveling. I didn't yet know how, but I knew it would happen. They had taken my money, but they would soon learn they had also awakened something far more powerful, the strength of the woman they had underestimated all her life. And this time, I wasn't going to stay silent. The days that followed my parents' betrayal felt like walking through a storm I hadn't asked for. I went to work as usual, but inside I was a boiling mix of rage and disbelief. Every time I looked at my phone, there was another family group message about wedding plans. Flower arrangements, cake tastings, guest lists, all funded by what used to be my future. My parents acted as if nothing had happened, as though draining my savings was a trivial family favor. They expected me to attend the wedding, to smile for pictures, to stand proudly beside Ethan and Clara as if I hadn't been robbed. Each message, each photo of them grinning while touring venues, was another stab to my chest. But the more they ignored what they'd done, the more determined I became. I refused to let them get away with it. I wasn't just angry. I was awake now. A few days later, I decided to go to the bank to request copies of the transaction records. I wanted to see every detail of what they had done. The banker recognized me and pulled up my file, asking for identification. As she scrolled through the computer, I leaned closer and saw something that made my heart skip. My name was still listed as a joint account holder. I blinked, barely believing it. That meant legally, I still had authority over that account. "Can I make changes to this account?" I asked carefully. The banker nodded. "Yes, Ms. Miller. As long as you're listed here, you have full rights." My pulse quickened. I spent the rest of the day studying every transaction. The payment to the venue had only been partial, a deposit to reserve the date. The final balance hadn't been paid yet. They were depending on that same account for the rest. I sat there quietly smiling to myself. They had taken from me, assuming I was powerless, but they had underestimated me again. Over the next few days, Ethan continued to boast on social media about his luxury wedding, with captions like, "Couldn't have done it without family support." And dreams coming true. My friends, unaware of the truth, congratulated him while I silently seethed. I didn't comment on or like a single post. I was done pretending. 1 week before the wedding, I returned to the bank. I asked to freeze the account, citing suspicious activity and unauthorized withdrawals. The banker nodded, filing the paperwork without question. When I left, I felt a strange calmness wash over me. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't confronted anyone. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had control. 3 days later, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. Her expression was sharp and furious. "What did you do, Emily?" she demanded before I could even open my mouth. "The payment for the venue didn't go through. They said the account's frozen." I leaned against the counter, keeping my voice steady. "I secured my funds. That account still has my name on it. You shouldn't have touched it in the first place." Her face flushed with anger. "You're ruining your brother's wedding. Do you know how embarrassing this is? Everyone's counting on us." "Everyone except me," I said coldly. "You took something that wasn't yours. You didn't ask, you didn't care. And now you want me to feel guilty because you got caught? You're being selfish," she snapped. "This is family. You'll get your money back eventually." "Eventually?" I laughed bitterly. "Mom, that was 8 years of my life. 8 years of sacrifice. You didn't steal money. You stole my peace, my trust, and my future." Her eyes softened for a moment. but pride held her back. "You've always been dramatic, Emily. This is why you don't understand family values." I didn't respond. There was no point arguing with people who believe betrayal was love. She left soon after, slamming the door behind her. That night, I received a message from Ethan. "If you don't unfreeze the account, don't bother coming to the wedding. You'll only embarrass yourself." I stared at his words for a long moment before replying simply, "Then I won't be there." The morning of the wedding arrived like a heavy cloud. I had told myself I wouldn't go, but as the hours passed, curiosity, or maybe justice, pulled me toward the event. I didn't dress up. I didn't bring a gift. I just wanted to see their perfect illusion crumble. The venue was a grand ballroom with tall chandeliers and white roses lining the entrance. Guests stood around, whispering in confusion. I blended into the crowd, unnoticed. I spotted my parents talking to the venue manager near the front doors, their faces pale and anxious. I moved closer, pretending to check my phone. "I'm sorry," the manager was saying firmly, "but until the remaining balance is cleared, we can't proceed with the ceremony." My father's voice trembled with anger. "This is ridiculous. We already paid the deposit." "The deposit doesn't cover the full cost, sir," the manager said. "No payment, no service. That's our policy." My mother pleaded, "Please, can't we just start the ceremony? We'll pay afterward, I promise." But the manager only shook his head. "I'm sorry, ma'am. That's not how we operate." Clara was standing nearby in her wedding gown, her makeup streaked with tears. "Ethan, fix this! Do something!" she cried. Ethan was pacing back and forth, his phone pressed to his ear, shouting at the bank. "This can't be happening." Guests began to murmur louder, some taking out their phones to record the chaos. The glamorous event that was supposed to showcase their status was turning into a public humiliation. I stood there watching, a quiet observer in the background. My parents looked like strangers to me, desperate, scrambling, exposed. For once, Ethan wasn't the hero. He was the spoiled son whose arrogance had finally caught up with him. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of my mother's eyes scanning the crowd. For a brief second, she saw me. Her lips parted, as if she wanted to call out, but I only gave her a small, knowing smile before walking away. Outside, the crisp air hit my face. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension melt from my body. I wasn't proud of what I'd done, but I didn't regret it either. They had taken everything from me without remorse. Now they had a taste of what it felt like to lose control. That night, I went home, made myself a simple dinner, and sat in silence. For the first time in years, my heart felt still. I didn't need revenge in flames or shouting matches. Justice had already been served, in the most poetic way possible. And as I fell asleep, one thought kept echoing in my mind. They had built their celebration on my sacrifice, and it had all collapsed under the weight of their own greed. Weeks passed after the wedding disaster, and the silence from my parents was deafening. At first, I thought they'd try to confront me, to hurl accusations about ruining Ethan's big day, but instead, there was nothing. No calls, no messages, not even a single word from my brother. It was as if the family had collectively decided I didn't exist. Part of me was relieved. Peace at last. But another part of me, the one that still carried the wounds of betrayal, couldn't stop replaying the chaos in my head. The image of my parents' embarrassed faces, the whispers among guests, and Ethan's helpless shouting as everything fell apart. It haunted me and soothed me at the same time. They had taken my future for their pride, and in the end, their pride was what crumbled before everyone's eyes. A month later, I finally got the call I'd been expecting. It was my mother. Her voice was unsteady, stripped of the authority she once wielded so easily. "Emily," she said quietly, "can we talk?" I hesitated, torn between curiosity and anger, but I agreed. We met at a small cafe near my apartment. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. The woman who once exuded control and perfection now looked fragile, aged and tired. She sat down across from me, eyes glistening with remorse. "We shouldn't have done what we did," she began. "Your father and I, we thought we were doing what was best for the family, but we were wrong." I didn't respond immediately. I wanted her to feel the weight of her own words. She sighed heavily and continued. Ethan and Clara broke up. After the wedding fell apart, she blamed him for everything. Said she couldn't marry into a family with such chaos. He's been devastated. A part of me wanted to smile. Poetic justice. Perhaps. But I didn't. I just stared at my mother and said evenly, "Now you understand how it feels when someone destroys something you've worked for." She looked down, tears slipping from her eyes. "We lost more than money that day," she whispered. "We lost our family. When I left the cafe, I felt lighter. Not because she apologized. Words could never undo the betrayal. But because I finally realized I didn't need their validation anymore. I had lived my entire life trying to earn their approval. And now, standing on my own, I saw the truth. I had been strong all along. They were the ones who needed me, not the other way around. Over the next few months, I focused on rebuilding what I'd lost. I met with the bank, fully separated my accounts from theirs, and ensured my finances were protected. I even managed to reclaim part of the frozen funds, enough to start fresh. With that money, I did something I'd been dreaming of for years. I bought my own apartment. It wasn't huge or luxurious, but it was mine. A quiet place on the edge of the city, filled with sunlight and peace. The day I got the keys, I stood in the empty living room, the walls bare, the air filled with that new space scent. And I cried, not from sadness, but from relief. Every corner of that place represented freedom. No one could take it from me. Ethan called a few weeks later. His voice sounded strained, different, no longer the arrogant tone I'd grown used to. "Hey, Em," he said softly. "Can we talk?" I hesitated but agreed. When he arrived, he looked lost. His usually perfect posture was slumped, and the confident smile he always wore was gone. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," he began. "I didn't realize how much that money meant to you." I folded my arms, studying him. "It wasn't just money, Ethan. It was respect. It was my future. You all treated it like it was nothing." He nodded, eyes full of regret. "I know, I was stupid. I thought Mom and Dad were doing the right thing, and I didn't question it. But after everything, I see it now. They always treated me like the favorite, and I let it happen because it was easy. But I never realized how unfair it was to you." His honesty disarmed me. I had imagined this conversation so many times, filled with shouting or bitterness. But in reality, it was quiet and raw. For the first time in years, we spoke like real siblings, about our childhood, about how different our lives had been under the same roof, about the damage that favoritism had caused. "You deserved better," he said finally. "And I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you." Something in his voice told me he meant it. And though I couldn't erase the past, I found it in myself to forgive. Not for him, but for me. Carrying anger had been exhausting, and I was ready to let it go. "It's done," I said softly. "We can't change what happened, but maybe we can stop pretending everything was perfect." He smiled faintly, and for a brief moment, I saw my brother, not the golden boy my parents worshipped, but the flawed human being beneath. As time went on, things began to settle. My parents reached out occasionally, testing the waters of reconciliation, and while I wasn't ready to fully trust them again, I no longer felt the same burning resentment. I kept my distance, protecting my peace, but I no longer needed revenge. The truth was, I had already won. Their lies had fallen apart, their favoritism exposed, their reputation tarnished. The world had seen who they really were, and so had I. One evening, as I stood by the window of my new apartment, the city lights twinkling below, I thought about everything that had happened. I had lost my savings, my trust, and my family's respect. But in return, I had gained something far more valuable: freedom. I wasn't the quiet, obedient daughter anymore. I was a woman who had faced betrayal, fought for herself, and rebuilt her life from the ashes. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about destruction. It wasn't about watching others fall. True revenge was reclaiming your power after someone tried to take it from you. It was standing tall when they expected you to break. As the night deepened, I smiled to myself, a calm, peaceful smile. The past no longer had control over me. The pain had shaped me, but it no longer defined me. My parents' betrayal had once been the darkest chapter of my life, but now it was the beginning of my strength. And as I turned off the lights and lay down to sleep, I knew one thing for certain. I had won my peace, and no one would ever take it away from me again.